Alright, this is my first time filming in the wood shop, so bear with me and cut me some slack. Today we're going to go over the Harbor Freight workbench and some of the modifications I've made to it. So let's start with one of the first ones that I did. Super simple. All of these are virtually free, and I'll explain why in a minute. So the first one's going to be putting your shop towels on the bench. It comes with the bracket here when you purchase this big set from Harbor Freight. So literally all you have to do is put a couple screws in there and you're good to go. This bench is actually pretty sturdy, and the biggest issue with it is racking forces. So side to side, you'll see it's moving a little bit more because I did put casters on it. That'll be a freebie for this video, but that one does cost money. I think it was $27 for these heavy-duty casters on Amazon. They're dirty, don't judge. And they're pretty simple. Allows me to move it around the shop or garage as needed, and then get things going where I need them to. The next thing we'll go over that I've done is put gloves on the side of the bench. Yes, it's crooked. It's because it got knocked off last time we moved. But this is literally just scrap wood and a box of gloves. And I mounted it low enough that when I'm empty, I can just reload them. So that's plain and simple. And then the next thing you'll probably notice that I've done to help with the racking forces is I've put basically a strut back here on the back side that goes from corner to corner. So nothing too crazy on those first few, but what the remainder of this video is going to be is us fixing this to the side of the bench so that we have some extra workspace. And the next video will be us trying to install a tail/wagon vise on it. So our goal today is to get this pinned in place, hope that this can hold the weight of it, and go from there. Okay, so we've got the new addition to the bench down, and I'll go ahead and explain why this is mostly free additions, we'll say, that I've made to this workbench. Everything you've seen up to this point has been scrap wood. The glove container, scrap wood. The strut back here, scrap wood. Even this extension that we're putting on today is scrap wood. And the process to get it to this point was running all of these scrap 2x4s through a planer, so we got nice jointing faces on the long sides, and then a big glue up, which took a little bit of effort, and then passing it back and forth through a planer with my buddy, which was not super exciting. We're both fat and out of shape, and I have a cheap Harbor Freight planer. So had a couple issues, had a couple major tear outs and whatnot, but nothing too crazy to get to this point. Our next biggest hurdles here are going to be that of this bench, and the addition we're doing is about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch difference. And then I don't know if you can see it, but that's not very thick for the bags in the drawers. So the plan is we're going to take these dowels and we're going to drill holes so that they are pinned into this portion of the extension wing. And then the theory is that this will distribute the load in 4 separate places across the bench. And then we may attempt to cut a wedge and drive a wedge to pull it tight to the bench. That way everything's nice and flush. I think the issue there is going to be that this won't be a jointed edge like what we've got over here. And then we'll take a page out of some of the hand tool folks, and we will cut a slot here and put a wedge in it so that it kind of pins itself in place. Depending on the matchup between these two faces, we may or may not use glue. This is a slick surface, so it'll take some prep work to take some glue. And I don't necessarily want to ruin the entire bench, especially if it comes down to it that this can't hold the weight. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I'm going to go ahead and get some lines drawn up and laid out, and we'll go from there. One more modification. So this is like, I think we're at like 7 modifications now that I didn't show off yet. See this very well. You'll notice there's a bunch of sawdust in these dog holes, the ones that are covered. Cover up your dog holes so that your drawers don't get full of sawdust and whatnot. The dog holes on this Harbor Freight bench don't actually fit most common dog hole accessories in my experience. So that's another reason for the extension that we're doing today. That way I can cut my own dog holes. I'm sure I could size these up to fit, but it's just not sturdy enough for what I want to do. I want to be able to do some legitimate hand planing on some different materials, and I needed a new project. Okay, so we've got the lines laid out. Look at those. We're going to be 2 inches from this post right here, and then we're going to split 20-inch sections here in the middle, and then another one right here. Some of you may have already noticed. I sure didn't until it was almost too late, but I haven't drilled any holes yet. The vise hardware that comes installed on this is going to be problematic. It's going to be getting in the way here. Take a look under here. That vise block is just about right where we need to drill that hole. So that one will not be able to be a through hole. It leads me to believe that at least this first one, close to the vise, will have to have a wedge to pull it tight, because there's not going to be a way to pin it. So I guess we'll start drilling and figure that out. Alright, so I don't know how that time lapse turned out, so let's take a look. This is the general concept, except the length is hopefully going to be inside of that. Hole's a tight fit, so not expecting too many issues out of that. Yeah, let's carry on. Okay, so that dowel was a bit of a pain to get that hole. However, I'm not going to test fit the other ones and just hope for the best. It means that we're going to have a pretty good friction fit. So the wedges, the V wedges and the split wedges should do a pretty good job of holding this in place. My next concern is that this is going to be too heavy for a 3/4 inch dowel, which is a pretty good possibility. This is one hand, I'm going to say 50 pounds or so. We'll get to laying out lines on this and go from there and hope for the best. Alright, idiot vlog, part 87. The workbench, 5 foot. The 6 foot. So all the layout lines I just started doing are dead wrong. At least the ones on this end are. So we have to get all the stuff out from in front of the miter saw and set up another cut. So guess we'll get to doing that. On the bright side, this does help with our weight issue to an extent. So we'll figure out which side of this we want to cut off. Because I think there's one that you can see some daylight through. I didn't say it was a good glue up, I just said it was a glue up. You may notice I'm using a Sharpie for marking, and that's for a couple reasons. First off, this is a workbench. It is already dirty. This surface is slippery. Pencil's not going to write on it. This fresh piece, yeah, pencil could write on it, but it doesn't have to be super accurate for what we're doing, and a Sharpie's just a little bit faster and what I reached for first. Not a huge deal to use a Sharpie on a project like this, but I would use a pencil for most other projects. Okay, so for those of you who have never used a miter saw before, at least a sliding miter saw, looks like we're a little bit out of square on the side we just cut by maybe a 1/16th, 1/8th at most, which isn't really going to affect what we're doing. One side is dead nuts at 60 inches, so we're good there, and we should be able to proceed as planned. We'll hang on to this block. It may come in handy later when we go to do the wagon vise. So yeah, I think. Okay, so we got the holes cut in the new slab. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to transfer layout lines from the side, the joint face, to the top. And the reason being is we're going to add a 5/16, 1/4, something like that dowel to this project. And what it's going to do is it's going to go complete the hole and the dowel to lock it in place. Okay. Now, I'm not a pro. I don't claim to be. I'm just a dude in his garage experimenting. In theory, this should give it some extra mechanical holding force. And it'll be a little decorative on top. So, gives us something to look forward to. So we're going to go ahead and transfer those layout lines, and then I'm going to glue the dowels in, pound them into place in this, and we will go from there. I'm not going to make you watch the glue dry, but it'll probably be on time lapse, so even if you do, it'll be like 2 seconds. Okay, so we noticed we didn't use a whole lot of glue. Maybe went kind of fast. Reason being, I don't want, personally, glue coming out of these holes. Primarily because it's going to be a reference surface and circles are a pain to clean up. For me, got my hand open with a chisel, kind of not fond of them. You may also notice we're not very straight here. That's not super concerning in my opinion, because we should have enough flex with 20 or so inches of dowel on this end to still maneuver into the holes. And actually that may end up helping us out with the joint seam on the side of the bench. So we'll see how it goes. We're going to let this dry and we'll come back to it. Okay, so I'm not on screen, but you should be able to hear me. We're not dry yet, but there's a couple things we can do. So we can go ahead and measure the workbench here, figure out our width. It's going to be 20 and a 16th. So what we'll do is we'll go to 20 and a half on these dowels that are sticking out. We'll make a mark and we'll go ahead and get them trimmed up so that we're not trying to fight an extra 2.5 foot dowel when we go to put it on the table. We'll probably go just a little bit past 20 and a half, just to be on the safe side. About 20 and 3/4. Actually, this one needs to be a lot shorter. Okay, so if you remember, our vise is in the way, so that one can't go all the way through. Let's go back here to the back of the bench. Sorry, I'm using the bench as part of my tripod here, so really we just need about 3 inches sticking out. Actually, this piece is 3/8, so we'll go to 4 inches. Make a mark there for that one. Something you may not have seen or noticed, because I think I did it off camera, I did label the faces, again, also in Sharpie. It's probably get sand again, if not hand plane, to be flush with the current workbench. So it's not super concerning to do it in Sharpie. Also, most finishes will take Sharpie off to an extent. So I'm gonna find a saw and get these cut down. Okay, in case you can't tell, I'm not a huge fan of hand tools because they go kind of slow. I do have some, I do dabble, but yeah, that just wasn't cutting it for this. So we got everything cut to length that we're gonna need, rough length. We will come back and use a hand saw for the inserts we're gonna do. But right now we're gonna go ahead and measure up that 3/8 of an inch for the wedges, and we'll start cutting those with a chisel. This we're going to switch to a pencil for, just because it is a finer line that we need to maintain, so we can see what we're doing here. So let's get this going. We'll set this to the depth of the piece. Promise there's like gunshots in the back, so I can't hear them. The neighbors do it. All right, we're inside the house now. Best part of how I do things, I have a 3D in about 11 minutes, I think it is. We will have a marking tool to do a full circle and round those dowels, and we'll go from there. Right now, we need to go make the wedges out of some white oak, so we're gonna go do a tool change in the garage and start working on that. So, plot twist, I don't think we're gonna do a tool change for this. I think we can do everything that we can do right here. We're gonna go ahead and cut the wedges, roughly 60-65 degrees, maybe too aggressive. We'll see. We'll kind of test fit it once we get our spacer done and off the printer. Helps if we plug in the tool. Okay, so looking at everything, it looks like the maximum cut I can do kind of safely is about that 63 degrees. So what we'll do from here is make several of these wedges. I'm not anticipating them going very well, so we'll see how this goes. Go ahead and cut a couple of these, probably use a slit. Okay, definitely not a fan of making those cuts. That was probably one of the sketchier operations I've done. So what we'll do now is we'll clean up these wedges just a tad bit and see about putting a 1/2 inch relief for the dowel in it. We'll probably go shy of a 1/2 inch just because the dowel itself, once we get the reliefs cut and the spacers done off the 3D printer, is going to be a little bit more narrow than 1/2 inch. So we'll get that laid out here and tack it with a chisel and go from there. We'll probably. So what I want to do is I want to drill just slightly under that 1/2 inch right here. Because it's long grain, I should be able to get it to split with a chisel down the rest of the way of the face of this wedge portion here, and that should give me the relief that I need to come back in. If you've never worked with oak, it's a pretty strong wood, but I hate working it. It dulls your tool super fast in my experience. It could be a sharpening issue and a personal issue, but that's what it is. We're going to go back to time lapse for drilling. Alright, so let's talk about these wedges. They took a little bit longer than expected, but not too terribly long. So let's take a look at them. They're not the prettiest things, right? This is a for me project. This isn't a customer project. This isn't anything crazy like that. The drill bit blew out on the back. The chiseling's not the best. There's a lot of blowout in these, but they're going to be functional, and they're never going to be seen. So I'm not super worried. They're all different heights, so we'll have to measure separately here. The 3D printer's done, so our spacer's done. We can make our marks for the wedges. And we'll go ahead and number them too with the Sharpie, so we know which wedge goes in which position. So let me go grab that off the 3D printer, and I'll be right back. So, just like that, 10 minutes later, we have a spacer we can mark with. So, let's get set up over here to mark. Grab our pencil, and this should go relatively smoothly, except the inner diameter is wrong. That's because I made this for a 1/2 inch dowel and not a 3/4. My infinite wisdom, I also made these in 1/2 inch. So, what I'm thinking we'll do is we will taper it about an eighth off of each side of these for the wedges to fit in. Something we can do with the spacer that we did print is go ahead and mark where these are going to need to sit, and we'll take it about a 16th to a 32nd shy of the top of whichever one we're going to end up using. That way we know where they need to go. Okay, so I screwed up again. Shocker? I know. The spacer I made was for 3/8, not 5/8. This is just a hair over half an inch thick. So what we'll go ahead and we're going to do it now is cutting the slits for the wedges. That one won't get one because it's not coming all the way through the bench to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that, I suppose. Alright, we're back this time finally with the right size spacer. Oh, look at that. Fits perfectly. So now we can actually scribe a line all the way around this. I have the garage door shut now, so lighting's probably miserable. Neighbors are doing leaves or something. So we'll get this one that's out of frame real quick. So, despite having screwed this up 3, maybe 4 times at this point, having a 3D printer is pretty awesome because if you have any sort of design experience, or even if you don't, Onshape makes it pretty easy. You can just go in, change a couple dimensions for the new print, and you're good to go. So, despite having printed 4 of these in the last 30 minutes or so, we're finally where we need to be. Okay. In case you can't tell, we've moved to the secondary bench, which is a unplugged and turned off table saw. But you're the first tool to be on a new bench, so congratulations. Or a new portion of the bench, I should say. Three's a bit of a chunky boy. Go back down to 4. Okay, took a break there on the time lapse so that I could knock these out. I didn't feel like it was that urgent to show. You didn't need a minute-long time lapse of me cutting stuff with a chisel. So this is essentially what we did. We made flat spots for the wedges on all of these. A few different methods here. We've got them all numbered. So you'll see number 1 fits kind of snug. We'll have to hammer it on the rest of the way, but that's good. What that means is that it will pull our joint face together with the bench, hopefully, and we can kind of go from there. So I think it's time to try to join it, which means I've got to clean all of that off and move it somewhere where I can attempt to do this myself, because in case you hadn't noticed, I'm working alone. Okay, so we're back in video here. For you it was 25 seconds, for me it was like 15 minutes. So here's where we're at. Dowels, generally speaking, obviously not the best tool in the toolbox. So what we've got going on here is dowel number 1, 2, 3 is just going wherever it wants to. The other two, manageable. So what we're going to do from this point is slowly try to press fit it in with the clamps. I don't know that we're going to have a whole lot of need for the wedges that we cut up and did, but we've got them. I mean, right now it's holding itself just fine. It was actually holding itself fine with just all of the weight dangling off like 1 inch worth of contact. So we'll go ahead and start getting these aimed up as best I can. Yeah, I can't tell from where I'm at whether or not that shows on camera, but it's not very straight. So let's get this set back up. Seconds, I should say. It's definitely been a few minutes. As you may or may not have been able to tell from the time-lapse angle, we still have a gap of about 1/4 inch here and about 1/8 of an inch here. I said it didn't need to be very precise, and it doesn't for what we're doing. However, that would make this a lot easier. I don't know if you can see how crooked that is. Oh, and it's splitting the original workbench here, so that'll need to be repaired sooner or later. That's a problem. I'm half tempted to just cut that one off because it's really not serving a purpose at this point with as much weight as this thing's already able to hold with just the dowels. I mean, literally when I got them in this first piece right in here, it was holding itself up all the way extended out. This could almost work as an extension wing, kind of like you would have on a table saw. But Yeah, I'm half tempted to just cut that one off and cut our losses on it. Alright, so I cut that off pretty rapidly, and you'll notice that was literally the only thing stopping us from a decent joint here. So, I'm stupid. We're going to keep going and see if we can get the other two wedges, because wedge number one down on the far, it shattered into a million tiny pieces. I think I got mad and threw it over there somewhere. But yeah, now that we have that figured out, we'll go ahead and get cranking. Alright, so all but one of the wedges have failed. The one that's down here. That one even kind of failed, but I was able to trim it to fit. So, you kind of had an impasse here. My elbow's about to give out from hammering. The clamp does not have enough pressure. And I don't really know what to do from here. I do know that I was planning on putting side pieces on here to kind of make two into one, just as a backup here. I kind of don't think the wedges will pull enough. I think they may actually end up pushing it back out when I start tapping those wedges in. Or these splines, whatever you want to call them. In fact, this one's almost completely closed up. This one's just going to be decorative now. Let me mix it up if I have one. So I kind of don't know what to do from here. General concept of the bench is done. Kind of have an idea of what we're working with here. At this point, we now have a 33-inch workbench top. It is a little tippy when you have it rolling around, but it's rock solid when it's down on the actual feet. So what I'm going to do from here is stop the video, keep throwing out my elbow, and next time I see you, hopefully we'll be putting a wagon vise in over here and some dog holes, so that we have some extra clamping space and we can get some lateral planing movements going. That's been the biggest issue with the vise that this thing comes with. Like I said, the dog holes aren't compatible with standard hardware that you can buy off Amazon or Tay Tools or anything like that. So we're making an addition. Sorry for the lighting, sorry for the audio. First video, did it all with my phone. One-man army and a one-man shop, trying to make a video. Extension on. There's finish on it, so I'm not going to touch it. We got some end boards here, which will hopefully help us when we go to put the wagon vise in on this side. We got the brand on there in a couple places. Didn't really take here because the tear out on that board. Got it down here, but it wasn't super hot. So the custom brands that I've had done, that I modeled myself, take a little bit to heat up because, well, they're stainless steel. But I did design them myself, and I did get them made. I think it was either PCB Way or Send Cut Send, something like that. But easy way to make your own brand. Go into Onshape and build it. So that's the final product. That said, for the outro, if you have any comments or ideas on what to do with this workbench, or if you want tips on Harbor Freight tools or anything like that, I almost made my shop name on Facebook and Etsy, the Harbor Freight Woodworker, because most of my stuff comes from Harbor Freight. A few people at work had to make me a liar and get me involved in some nicer tools. So that's where we're at. Feel free to give me tips. Don't tell me about my dangerous table saw cuts that I did for the wedges. I already know, not ideal. I already know I wasn't wearing Air Eye Pro at the miter saw station. But if you made it this far, feel free to give me some constructive criticism. And we'll go from there.